America, it is time to stop this insurgency. There's continued anarchy in our streets. I'll tell you about the mass looting here in New York City that I could hear from my window. I surveyed the aftermath this morning as well. Plus, Trump may invoke the Insurrection Act, CNN's unbelievable cowardice in the face of all of this, and the amazing and sudden drop in COVID hysteria coming up. Welcome, everybody, to the Buck Sexton Show, an island of sanity in an increasingly insane world. Thank you so much for being here. I have to say, I've been looking forward to the chance to speak to you all morning, and ever since last night when it was apparent that the city authorities here in New York, and I'm sure it's true of many others across the country, were now waking up to the shattered glass, the smoldering ruins of businesses, of structures that nobody would have ever thought would come under assault like this. But guess what? Here we are. We're all just trying to come to grips with what seems to be this new reality, a reality in which angry mobs, emboldened by media narratives of racial division and racist cops, are able to do whatever they want to property, to civil order, to law and order, and to our society. It seems as long as they're not dragging people out of their homes and beating them to death regularly, we are to sit back and just wait for this to burn itself out. Pardon the expression. I'm here in New York, and I could actually see one of the stores last night from my window that was broken into. They kicked in the glass door, they went inside, they looted everything. I was watching in real time online because this stuff's all over the internet. Everybody can see it. We're all locked in our homes. And in New York, you have oftentimes high enough elevation that you can have quite good sight lines of the riots and of the looting. And I did. And I can hear it and see it. And I wonder to myself, where is the 40,000 person strong NYPD right now? I spoke to contacts of mine in the department. They say they're spread thin already. It was 8,000 uniformed officers on the street just last night. It should have been 16,000, he told me. But the NYPD is already exhausted. They're running long shifts. They don't know if they can continue at this pace. And they know their bosses, de Blasio and Cuomo, who are, and let me just be very, very straightforward about this, abject fools, completely and utterly incapable of doing their jobs. But we don't know what's going to happen going forward because guess what? The looters, the rioters, they're just becoming even more emboldened with all of this. And this is now a symbol across the country. You had Macy's, one of the most famous department stores in the world. Fifth Avenue, which is mere blocks from where I'm doing this show right now. Perhaps the most famous stretch of retail stores in the world. Looted. Glass shattered. Fancy stores, not so fancy stores. For those, by the way, who want to tell you that, oh, no, this is just Antifa. It's not just Antifa. No, there are just rioters. They're not wearing the Antifa garb. They're not wearing anything that shows that they are anarchists. They're just angry. Mobs of youth that are angry. You can see on the videos yourself. It's posted online. And we're not talking about somebody smashing a store window, running inside, grabbing something and running away. That happens too. I'm talking about within hearing distance of where I'm doing this show. People forming a mob, laughing, screaming. There's broken bottles all over the streets here of hard liquor. What do you think that's all about? It's a party, folks. It's like the purge out there. They're celebrating this. They're laughing. They think it's hilarious. They think it's great. And the morons at CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times, and yes, the Democrat Party. These are Democrats supporting this. These are Democrats doing this. Let's just be clear on that fact. Not one MAGA hat at a single one of these protests or on a single one of these looters or rioters. Not one. Not one person that you can point to and say, oh, yes, that one is a Trump supporter. A lot of Biden voters out there either marching, which is fine. You want to march, you want to peacefully protest, God bless. No problem with that. It's annoying that we have to keep repeating that because it's so obvious. But this is a distraction. It's just a way to prevent you from focusing in on the real problems here. Oh, what about the mostly peaceful protest? I was at the peaceful protest, covering it, taking photos, taking audio in Times Square. No problem. And yes, there are people there who think that it's kind of like, hey, I would have been at Woodstock, but now I'm at this peaceful protest. No more police violence and racism. Now, these people aren't very bright and don't understand how the real world works, but they are harmless. But they become useful idiots when the protest continues on into the night, and then elements of it break off Antifa and looters, rioters. And some Antifa does looting and rioting, but there are also groups that have nothing to do with Antifa that are engaged in these activities. Where's the NYPD? Where are our police forces? I have a friend who's very senior in the chain of command for law enforcement in D.C. for the District of Columbia, not at the federal level, but for the district itself. Getting updates from him. What's going on there? Can't control it. Can't stop it. Now, I want to ask you this. Are we trying to stop it? Are we making the efforts necessary? Are we giving law enforcement the tools and, more importantly, the political backing to shut this down? We're not up for this right now, are we? We can't expect that the Democrats in charge of these cities in an election year are going to do what's necessary. And for those of you who live in redder parts of the country where you're allowed to bear arms, where you're allowed, you know, you a lot of you have been telling me for years, Buck, why haven't you moved? And you know what? You were right. What else can you say about this? The capital of the United States, Washington, D.C., is under siege. The most prominent financial capital in the world and the largest city in the United States, New York, is a constant stream now every night of looting and rioting and burning things. It's happening here in Manhattan. It was happening up in Fordham Road, up in the Bronx, too. It's happening all over the city. They coordinate. They use WhatsApp. They use these messaging platforms that are encrypted, so it's not that easy for law enforcement to get into them and surveil them. And they coordinate mob activity. It is so disgraceful. And yet, when you turn on CNN, when you hear de Blasio speak, somehow the focus is still on, well, you know, there's bad cops out there and we need to deal with bad police. But did you see this incident where someone in the NYPD got a little too rough? I mean, I'm wondering how much longer people are going to put up with this before you start to see them fleeing the city in droves. Remember, you can't open your business. You can't gather in a restaurant right now because of the science, which is a lie. These people that have been telling you this, Fauci ruined the economy of this country because he's a lib bureaucrat. He was wrong. Let's just say this. He was wrong. The shutdown was wrong. And now we're going through this? Do you think there was any social distancing with the thousands of protesters crammed together on the streets, marching to end racism? Of course not. Now, many of them wear masks, but oh, what a coincidence. It happens to be tremendously useful for them to be wearing masks so that if they decide they want to go light a garbage can or a building on fire, maybe even a historic church in Washington, D.C., they can do so and not get caught by the police, not get caught on camera and then get tracked down later on. We need law and order. The president said that he would deliver it. We're going to get into a situation now where governors like Cuomo, who should be recalled, he is an abject disgrace. Him and his buffoon meathead brother over at CNN aren't funny anymore. It's disgusting what has gone on here. both of them. The reality is the Trump administration wants to provide federal resources to cities that are overrun right now. They can't handle the caseload. They can't handle the number of people that are willing to engage in this looting. While CNN saying it's mostly peaceful, and it's because people are hurting out there. Mostly peaceful. People are hurting out there. Oh, you know who's hurting? The business owners and the employees of these businesses who are losing, who knows how, I can't even begin to calculate the costs. Looting, rioting, breaking storefronts. I mean, this and the psychological damage. This is an insurgency against our society from the left. We need to understand what that really means, and we have to show the will to break the back of this movement. Because that's what it is. It has become a movement of criminality. Yes, there is a peaceful element to it on the side. That doesn't matter. No one is talking about that. At night, there are not these peaceful protests in New York. There is anarchy on our streets. I was hearing it. It sounded like Apocalypse Now with all the helicopters hovering overhead and the shattered glass on the streets and all the sirens going constantly. This is the city that I'm supposed to live in, and a city where I'm disarmed, where I have no Second Amendment rights, because the cowardly libs think that law-abiding people can't be entrusted to protect themselves and their property. I'm starting to think that it's reckless to live in a lib city. I'm starting to think that it's not possible to reason with these morons in City Hall. And this isn't just New York. I know for a lot of you listening across the country, your city, if you live in a city, is going through the same thing. Where's the outrage from the media about this? Where are the leaders on the left, the progressives? Where are the leaders in the African-American community coming out to say, hey, knock all this crap off. We unite with good police, which is 99.9% of them. We unite with the police to restore order on our streets. Oh no, these little make-believe revolutionaries typing feverishly on their computers in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, or out in Santa Monica, or wherever the heck they live. Oh yeah, get the cops, defund the police. Cowards, all of them. The moment that they were under threat, the moment the bad people came to kick in their door, they would be calling the cops. And you know it. We all know it. But they like this make-believe, this pretend revolutionary game. They don't care who gets hurt. They don't care that cops have been shot, that buildings have been burned to the ground, that in one case firefighters tried to get to a 2-year-old trapped in a burning building, and the peaceful protesters were blocking access. At what point do we have to wait until a 2-year-old gets burned alive because these psycho crybabies out on the street aren't getting their way? Is that what's supposed to happen? We have to wait for the casualties to pile up before we can actually deploy the police resources that we need to, in the way that we need to. Send in the National Guard, flood the streets with security personnel, anyone rioting punished to the fullest extent of the law. No bail, max, hold them. That's what we should be doing. Not going to hear that from the libs out there, from the lib media. They'd rather watch cities burn and then take it upon themselves to be the ones who say they'll heal the country. As long as it means Joe Biden's in charge and the Democrat apparatus takes over for that senile buffoon, that's all that really matters to them. They're part of the insurgency against this country, and it's time we fight back.
The following measures are going into effect immediately. First, we are ending the riots and lawlessness that has spread throughout our country. We will end it now. Today, I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. Mayors and governors must establish an overwhelming law enforcement presence until the violence has been quelled. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
And you know what? He's right. But already the governors are pushing back on this from the blue states. They've made this political. They don't care what's happening to their residents. They don't care what's going on in communities, including communities of color, which are disproportionately damaged and affected by many of these riots and the looting and what's going on. You know, I told you about the famous stores on Fifth Avenue, and I was taking photos of them in what looked like just complete destruction and disarray. You know, they've got wooden planks being put up everywhere, wooden plywood boarding where the windows used to be. In some cases, they got the boarding up before they could be shattered, which was a good move. But other places, I mean, the Microsoft store, big glass frontage on Fifth Avenue. I mean, these stores, the rent on them, I mean, this is some of the most expensive commercial real estate on planet Earth. On one of the most famous streets in the world. We all knew that there were bad guys up to bad things last night. We all knew they were going to go in Midtown and loot. And yet, where were all the arrests and how did they no, they didn't stop this. Valentino, Coach, Microsoft, Ferragamo, Rolex, Verizon, all these stores I saw just smashed up, broken into, ruined. But also remember this, there was a little restaurant just around the corner from me, Indian place. To be honest with you, I've never been. I like Indian food. I've never been to this particular restaurant, but it's tiny. Looks like it could seat maybe 10 people. It's clearly not a chain. It's not part of some bigger brand. It's a mom and pop place. It's the kind of place that people would write about they'd write about if they were doing a profile on, someone bringing the American dream to their family. And I walked past this tiny place that I had barely even noticed before because it's so small. And and doesn't have much, it doesn't have a lot of frontage. It's maybe 12 feet across. One glass window, one glass door. And you know what? It was shattered. Someone went in and just kicked in the door, kicked in the window, just broke the glass everywhere. And it was there was no one there fixing it this morning because the restaurant's probably been closed for 2 months now. Right? It's been shut down because of COVID-19. So not only has that restaurant lost its business because of the COVID hysteria that the lockdown libs pushed on us, and yes, Republicans went along with, and we will have a hard time living that one down. Some of us were warning about how bad an idea it was early, but this restaurant shows you, what happened there shows you, that this isn't about justice. It's not about systemic racism. It's about rage. It's about people kicking in the front door of an Indian American's restaurant that he uses or she uses, whoever the owner is, to feed his or her family because the people going around in the streets think that destruction is a big fun party.
All Americans were rightly sickened and revolted by the brutal death of George Floyd. My administration is fully committed that for George and his family, justice will be served. He will not have died in vain. But we cannot allow the righteous cries and peaceful protesters to be drowned out by an angry mob.
Let's start with a very important question that you will not see the media ask, right? Because they are very much in on this. Racial division for liberals, for the left-wing, virtue signaling obsessed mindset. Racial division is too profitable to exploit in every sense. And so they fan the flames. They make it worse. They do this at CNN and MSNBC. What is their favorite epithet for conservatives and Republicans? Racist! Right, everything is always racist all the time. We know it's absurd. But this is what they do. There's no compunction about it. They don't feel bad about it. It's a useful weapon, a useful tool for them. But let's step back from that for a moment. What you just heard the president there. You heard the president on this show a couple of days after the George Floyd incident happened. And he was saying it was terrible. We're on this. There will be justice. Every cop that I have talked to, and I know plenty of very conservative cops, every cop that I've talked to has said, or either to me or has publicly come out to say, that what happened to George Floyd was wrong. It was police abuse and it was murder. Every single one. What do the people rioting in the streets want Trump to have done differently about all of this? How is someone kneeling on the neck of a man in Minneapolis in a liberal city for a liberal police commissioner and a liberal mayor? How is that Donald Trump's fault? But more to the point, because then they'll talk about, but the context and yeah, right, sure. The context is always whatever they want it to be to justify whatever they want. We know this, right? It's the dissolution of morality and culpability. That's what the left actually does with their relativism and their application of collective guilt as they see fit and as it suits their purposes. But look at this now. Where is there the falling down on the job from the president on the George Floyd case? What was he supposed to do? I wonder. He condemned it, said it was horrible, said the DOJ will look into it as a civil rights violation. It's really a local crime story, right? Meaning it's a local crime jurisdiction issue. But of course, because of the video, it went mega viral. We've all seen it. And I keep hearing people raise this claim all the time. If George Floyd were white, they keep saying, if George Floyd were white, there'd be the outcome would have been different. Maybe. Do they know the name Daniel Shaver? Do they know that twice as many white people are killed in America by police every year as black people? Now, I know that there's a larger overall white population, but plenty of white people are getting killed by cops too, and also Asians and Latinos and other people are getting killed by cops. This happens. Do they know any of those names? And if you're going to tell me, but there's never police brutality like this, watch the Daniel Shaver video. It is an execution on camera with plenty of time to think about what's going on from the cop's perspective. It's appalling. Cops got off. Didn't even go to prison. So it's not true that this only happens to black Americans. That's a lie. Now, they could say that it disproportionately happens, but that's not the claim. The claim is if he were white, this would not have happened. That's just categorically false. You don't know that. You can't prove that. And the data doesn't support that. But it gets people very fired up. It gets people all everyone gets very angry. Let's abuse each other's emotions here. Let's turn the temperature up as high as possible. Let's be reckless in the rhetoric that is used. But look, the political and ideological left in this country is a disease of the mind. It is seeking to destroy America. We have now crossed the Rubicon on this. We have seen this coming for a while, but now we know for sure. We can't even agree with the left that our communities should be safe, that there should be order on the streets, that innocent civilians and innocent business owners should have the protection of the police. You had one mayor, I don't even know if I have this audio, I think it was, or one chief of police rather, I think it may have been in Baltimore, saying, I'm not going to put people in danger to defend property. I got news for her. If the police will not defend property, then people are going to have to step up and defend property. And if I'm in a store and I see someone lighting a Molotov cocktail, if I'm in, an auto body shop that I've put my life savings into, or I've got a hardware store that I run or whatever, and I'm there and I have a lawful firearm and I see someone getting rocks together and any kind of incendiary device, I'm going to confront them and I'm going to use lethal force to defend myself and my property, and I'd be right to do so. How long are they going to wait and allow this to continue before we see that happening? And I'm not the only one that's pointing this out and saying, these looters, these rioters, They're in they're in the good guy gun-free zones of major Democrat strongholds. Yeah, the cops have guns, but we know the cops can't use. Oh my gosh, if a cop pulled his gun, there's so much criticism of these incidents involving police trying to deal with these riots. You know, a cop pulled his gun and everyone said, oh, and de Blasio, the mayor here, jumped on him. Oh, look at this, it's so horrible. Pulled his gun because his lieutenant had just gotten hit with an iron rod. Oh, okay. Are we supposed to wait till cops get their brains bashed out on the street before anyone's able to do anything about this? This is what's going on in this country right now. We've just been through this hell of the COVID-19 lockdown, and it's a statist, media, Democrat-driven hysteria. Not entirely Democrats. I know, and I have to keep saying that because I don't want to be accused of saying there were Republicans who went along with this. There were, oh, if you don't want to do this, you. And the Trump administration, Trump has been such a fighter on so many things, and he has been such a blessing to this country. But on this one, look, it's tough for me to blame him because it was just so much. You have your what would you say if, the military, all your military experts came to you and said, look, you either do this first strike on, XYZ enemy, or they're going to nuke us. You got 5 minutes, Mr. President. What are you going to say? No, I don't believe all of my generals, and I don't believe, That's basically what happened to him with COVID-19. He's got the CDC and the NIH all saying, oh, if you don't do this, 2 million people are going to die. He knew it wasn't right, though. They got him to bend the knee. And now we see, there's a sense that, we can overcome. We can, with brute force, overcome the Trump administration. We can't beat it on ideas. We certainly can't beat it on results. But if we just get out there and demand, if we hold the American people hostage, then the left can finally get what it wants here. It's only a matter of time before this boils over in a way that is catastrophic, beyond what we've already seen. I mean, it turns into real violence. Sheriff Grady Judge out in Polk County gave this warning to looters, at least in his county. Here's what he said. Play clip 1.
We have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns. So leave the community alone. And we'll do our best to support the community. But ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it. All of that ugliness has taken away from what we're united about. We're united about the conduct that you saw with George, where his life was taken with a knee to the neck. It's horrific, and there's not enough words to explain that. Let's keep the focus on that.
This is exactly why so many people out there are believers of the Second Amendment. You know what you're also not going to hear from anybody who's intelligent for quite a while? Why would you ever need an AR-15? Oh, I don't know, because a double-barreled shotgun with 2 rounds in it's not going to do you that much good if 20 people want to light your house on fire. Oh, why don't you just have all you need is a hunting rifle to defend yourself. No, there's better stuff out there. And I can tell you this, too. He's talking about Polk County down in Florida. And Florida, producer Mark's going to be happy to hear me say this. One of these places I'm really thinking about is at least there are enough Republicans there that statewide there is sanity. There's a decent governor who has done a fantastic job with COVID-19, despite all the media lies about him. And you do have Second Amendment rights in Florida. If I was thinking about this because my building here in New York has the first floor is all glass. It's glass. People could easily, and that's true of a lot of buildings in Midtown, all these newer buildings, they have they have glass fronts. People could easily break in We've got one person at a front desk doing security. That person is not equipped, nor would I ever expect them to be, to do anything about this. They're not armed. And then it's a free-for-all. Then you're in the whole building. And they could go into this building, and they could be about 99% sure, unless they happen to have some off-duty cop in the building or something who's sitting at home too, that nobody in this building is going to have a firearm. I was thinking about this last night. What if the riot finds it was right across the street? What if they said, hey, you know what? People are terrified in their homes. There's a lot of people have a lot of money in their homes. We're going to go loot those too. You're going to get into a hand-to-hand combat situation, my friends. Not allowed to have guns in New York. Look, blue states, blue cities, learning a tough lesson right now. I know a lot of you in the red states are shaking your heads going, yup, that's right. And it's true. It's true. If I had one lawful firearm in my possession in my building, at least it would mean that everyone else, the hundreds of other people who live in my building, could count on one person being able to mount a real defense in the case of a violent riot starting, which, why do we assume that can't happen? Why do we assume that they're only going to attack commercial establishments and anybody who happens to get in the way? It's the purge out there right now. The Democrats own this. They are the reason for this. They are behind this, and they won't stop this. And they're going to use it. They're going to say it's Trump's fault. Somehow Trump's the president, but their voters and their politicians are the ones that are causing this. But it's Trump's fault. Put Joe Biden in charge. This is the game. This is the nonsense that they're going to pull. We cannot let them win. These people will destroy the country now if you let them. They will destroy it.
The president of law and order, as he now calls himself, which is how he pronounced himself. And then he claimed a power he doesn't really have. He can't send the military into every state. That's not law and order. What the president doesn't seem to know or care is that the vast majority of those protesting, they too are calling for law and order. A black man killed with 4 officers holding him down, a knee to the neck for more than 8 minutes, nearly 3 minutes of which he was no longer conscious for. That's not law and order. That's murder. Stopping and frisking a young black man simply because he's a young black man, that's not law and order. The killing of George Floyd, Eric Garner, the torture of Abner Louima, that's not law and order. The president seems to think that dominating black people, dominating peaceful protesters is law and order. It's not. He calls them thugs. Who is the thug here? Hiding in a bunker? Hiding behind a suit? Who is the thug? People have waited for days for this wannabe wartime president to say something. And this is what he says, and that is what he does.
Multimillionaire Journo Anderson Cooper, giant fraud, and everyone's realizing really just deeply unimpressive, has been so very lucky, and not just to be born into a enormously wealthy family, but also to get propped up as someone that people should listen to for reasons that have never been proven to anyone paying attention other than he can read off a teleprompter. Wants you to know that the thugs are not the people breaking into stores or beating old lady with boards and sticks or stabbing police officers in the neck or shooting at cops. The thug is Donald Trump. These people are sick. I mean, these prominent left-wing lib journos are so terrified of calling out what's actually happening here. God forbid they place blame where it belongs right now, which is on those who are actually doing all the illegal acts. And also, if they call this out too much, it distracts from the overall message, which is, of course, that police are so racist and awful. That's what they want you to take away. That's what they want their viewership to believe. And, he's not the only one who's doing this. I mean, you have so many people that are taking this as an opportunity. I mean, here's one-time, highly unsuccessful presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Play clip 10.
Threatening the American people with the American military, use of the American military against its own people. He is not a commander-in-chief. He is a divider. He is clearly scared, and he cannot meet this moment that he has partly created because of his inability to understand the pain and the suffering. Right now, America is raw. Her wounds are exposed. And instead of having a president who understands it, who empathizes, who lifts up the spirits and acknowledges the pain, we have someone who chooses to hold up the Bible like a prop for his own political gain and for a photo op.
Holds up the Bible like a prop. The country is raw. Why does she think the country is raw right now? Isn't it so interesting to hear this formulation? You have hundreds, perhaps thousands of businesses looted, burned to the ground, destroyed, ruined. People have been violated. Imagine how you would feel if you arrived to your business, your place of work, your store, your restaurant, after it had been ransacked by a mob. What would that do to you? What would that do to your psychology? But no. Kamala Harris only has sympathy for people who feel violated overwhelmingly because of something that happened hundreds, perhaps a couple thousand miles away from them, involving one cop who is already arrested and facing murder charges. That's the pain that we're all supposed to feel. Why is that the case?